Raising the minimum wage for fast food workers has been grabbing a lot of attention lately. We'll see how the quest for 15 and a union looks in Kansas City.
Also, When I Come to Die puts capital punishment on stage at the KC Rep.
And Sydney Milstein drops by to talk architectural marvels at Pratt & Whitney, all coming up on The Local Show. Hi, I'm Randy Mason.
And I'm Nick Haynes. This week our show begins with a topic that's gotten a lot of attention in the last few months, raising the minimum wage. You know, currently it's $7.25 an hour in Kansas and $7.50 in Missouri, which is the same as the federal rate.
Starting last summer, the Kansas City area saw a series of strikes by fast food workers demanding 15 and a union. It was part of a nationwide movement to address what the workers feel is a poverty wage. President Obama recently mentioned it in his State of the Union address.
Reporter Steve Hebert followed the strikers during several of last year's demonstrations and gives us this look inside the issue and the economics that surround it.
I don't want to live in an America that allows people to work 60 hours a week and live below the poverty line. I don't think anyone wants to live in that America. And that is the America that we're creating with this minimum wage. This minimum wage is not enough money for people to live on, and that should be an issue for anyone who claims the great values of this country. We have a wonderful country with great democratic values. If we're going to claim those values, we cannot allow people to live in poverty and work full time.
It's extremely hard because right now, if anyone that's working minimum wage can work a full 80 hours every 2 weeks and they're only bringing home $300 to $400, that's half of a light bill or half of a gas bill. So it's extremely hard to live on $7.35 in this economy.
I make $9.43 an hour, and that's not enough to get by. It's not enough to pay bills. It's not enough to make rent every month. I live in fear our utilities will be shut off every month. You know, it's hard to afford food sometimes. It's rough. It's definitely not enough. We need more.
If you do the math, someone who's working 60 hours a week at the minimum wage will not earn enough to even meet the federal poverty standards for a family of four. And working at the number of hours that the fast food industry, for example, typically allots to their workers, you can't even get close to earning a sufficient amount to provide for yourself and your family.
My jobs don't match up off days, so I work 7 days a week. I'm up early in the morning, often before my kids awake, and I'm home at night. By the time I get home, they're asleep. So it's consecutive days I don't see my kids. Me and my fiance, we barely see each other. It's brief hi and bye. So it's really damaging to my family structure. It's not normal.
Turn it up! Turn it up! Turn it up! Turn it up!
A recent study from the University of California, Berkeley focused on the public costs of low-wage jobs in the fast food industry. The study found that the median wage of workers was $8.69 an hour. Median hours worked was 30 per week. And only 13% of workers receive health benefits through their employer. It highlighted that 52% of the families of frontline fast food workers are enrolled in one or more public safety net programs compared to 25% of the U.S. workforce as a whole. The study focused on the 4 largest nationwide safety net programs and found that in Missouri, 49% of fast food workers relied on public assistance, with a cost to the U.S. taxpayer of $149 million a year.
Hey! Ho, ho! These poverty wages got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! These poverty wages got to go! Hey, hey!
The Berkeley study concluded that due to low wages and benefits and part-time employment, nationwide, families of fast food workers utilize federal public benefit programs at a cost to the U.S. taxpayer of nearly $7 billion a year.
And so when you divide that $7 billion among those workers, what it works out to is basically $4 an hour. So if we take the minimum wage, which is $7.25, and add to that those $4, to get those workers to the point they are now would require a wage of $11.25, and that's basically at a welfare level. If you look at the total amount of profits and dividends that were distributed by the fast food industry, it's well to the north of $7 billion. So basically what's happening here is a transfer, and it's a transfer from ordinary taxpayers to those who make profit out of the fast food industry.
Me and my fiance, and we both work. I work 2 jobs, so if you do it, it's 3 incomes, 3 jobs, and yet we still get food stamps. We'd rather make our way and go to work and make money and not have to get food stamps or depend on Medicaid. But I can say now I would not be able to feed my kids without food stamps. So I appreciate, and a lot of workers appreciate the program. But for a person that's up working every day, it shouldn't be that way.
Got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho.
The National Restaurant Association represents fast food restaurant owners. They dispute the Berkeley study, saying, America's restaurant industry provides opportunities for millions of Americans, women and men from all backgrounds, to move up the ladder and succeed. These misleading efforts use a very narrow lens and selective data to attack the industry for their own purposes, and fail to recognize that the majority of lower wage employees works part-time to supplement a family income. Moreover, 40% of line staff workers in restaurants, the primary focus of the reports, are students. The Berkeley researchers claim that this is not an accurate assessment of the workforce and dispute the idea that most workers are teenagers living at home with their parents. They break down the workforce this way and state, overall, 68% of the core frontline workers in the fast food industry are not in school and are single or married adults with or without children. And for more than 2/3 of these workers, fast food wages are an essential component of family income.
My mom worked in fast food for as long as I can remember. When I was born, she worked at Godfather's. When my little brother was born, she worked at McDonald's. When my other sister was born, she worked at Wendy's. She always struggled to pay rent, to make sure we had food. 4 days after I turned 16, I started my first job at Pizza Hut. My oldest daughter just turned 16 a few months ago and started her first job at Steak and Shake as a server. I desperately want to break this cycle. I don't ever want my children to settle for less. I want them to know that they are worth more. We are worth more. So we're fighting to make it happen.
15, 15, show me, 15, 15, 15, 15, 15.
If you have an employee that's been paid $7.50 an hour and their wages suddenly doubled, a few things end up happening. First, probably the cost of the goods are going to rise. That's going to affect consumers. Also, employers are going to be a lot more picky about which employees they hire, because if they have to spend that much on an employee, they want to make sure that they have the very best employees, which means that lower skilled workers, I think, would be harmed.
Hey, 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 ho, ho. Poverty wages got to go. Hey, hey.
It also pushes employers toward technological innovations, automation that would also not only affect employees short term, but would also probably lock them out of a lot of different sorts of jobs over the long haul by essentially replacing them with technology that was too expensive before, but because labor has gotten more expensive, is a little bit more attainable for employers. So those three elements by themselves, I think, requires that we reflect on exactly what we're trying to accomplish when we talk about the minimum wage issue. If we're trying to alleviate poverty, it's really about making jobs more available and more accessible, and unfortunately, in a lot of respects, raising the minimum wage will work against that end.
Get down! KC is a union town. Get up! Get down! KC is a union town. Get up! Get down! KC is a union town.
By 1945, 1 out of every 3 workers in this country was in a union. And that created the momentum to build the middle class. And not only did workers get raises and some job security so that they weren't living in poverty, but they also got pensions, they got days off for vacations, they got holidays. All of these things the fast food workers today lack. They have no holidays, they have no vacation days, and certainly they have no pensions and they have no health care, most of them. Their working conditions are very, very similar to the working conditions of people who were in mass production industry in the 1930s. They did something about it, and now nobody says that they shouldn't make a decent wage. We got used to the idea that you work in a factory, you join the middle class. And I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be true for somebody who works at Wendy's or Pizza Hut.
The U.S. economy suffers from a chronic lack of demand for goods and services. And one of the reasons for that is because there's no purchasing power in the hands of the majority of consumers. If there were more dollars in the hands of the middle classes and the lower classes, and this is the economic argument, this would stimulate demand and generate new jobs in the private sector and have the entire multiplier effects that we're all familiar with from Econ 101.
When you talk about raising someone's wages, particularly on those who are lower wage earners, in the larger economy, it doesn't have a really large impact. I think that when that argument is made, it's overstated, unfortunately, and I think it conceals the more important problems of putting low-wage, low-skilled workers out of a job by implementing wage hikes that may, in the end, actually harm them more than help them, and let alone put more money into the economy.
If we had more money and we make the more money, we're gonna spend it. We're gonna put it back in the economy, which would essentially grow jobs. Because if I had more money, I would shop more. I would buy more for my kids, along with a lot of other people here in this country. So I don't see how the raising the wage would ruin the economy or cost jobs.
Workers are here to deliver a demand that they want to see changed. This is going to give other workers who aren't organizing a chance to see something they've never seen. Workers coming together, raising their voices for change at work.
We're going to go out there and raise our voices together and be heard, and we're not going to back down until we get what we want. We want 15 in a union, and that's what we're going to get.
I'm here fighting for you, I'm fighting for my family and my future and for a better life for all of us, and I'm glad we're all here standing up for what's right. So we want 15 in a union, and we want it now.
Now, no workers were fired for their participation in the demonstrations, but some employees at a local Popeyes did temporarily see a reduction in their hours. They've since had them restored. Organizers of the strikes, which so far have all taken place on the Missouri side, say they plan to continue their activities again this year.
Well, just this week, Sydney Milstein was described in the Kansas City Star as a history maven. She's one of those people we always look to when it comes to historic preservation and architectural treasures around town. Usually that means notable homes or beautiful old office buildings. This time, though, something completely different has Sydney's attention. It's called Velocity of Change, and it focuses on the old Pratt & Whitney plant on Bannister Road. Sydney, what would make you so interested in what a lot of people would say, well, that's just some old buildings out there on Bannister?
Well, I'm interested in it from the standpoint that I was actually hired to record the history and also to photograph the plant for a federal Section 106 requirement.
But once you got there, you saw some things that most of us simply had no idea even were out there.
Well, first of all, I didn't realize the actual size of it. It's 3 million square feet plus. The main manufacturing plant, which I could only gain access to because of high security to just a fraction of, was overwhelming. The place is monumental in size. There are over, I believe it's about 88 buildings, And step by step, inch by inch, I had to examine each of those buildings, record them, and then recommend whether or not they were eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. And then from that, mitigation documentation took place.
Are they worthy of of national recognition like that?
Well, since I started the project in 2009, I was hired by Burns & McDonnell to do what I do. And my contact out there was through the National Nuclear Security Administration, which is part of the DOE. And since I started in 2009, the building has been placed on the National Register for its significance in industry, engineering, and architecture. And we also recorded the plant for Historic American Engineering Record, which is now the document itself is housed in the Library of Congress for perpetuity.
What were they building there?
They built engines. They built what is known as the double WASP engine. And there were 14,000 parts that went into manufacturing this engine, and they were manufactured and tested out at the Pratt & Whitney plant during World War II.
And that photos that show that, or some of those cells, is that what we called them there? Or
yes,
some of the nomenclature is out over my head since I've never built an engine of any kind.
Well, there are many test cells out there. Some are 16 feet in diameter, while others are 24 feet in diameter. And the engines themselves were placed horizontally in the test cells, and they were tested and then taken apart and examined, for any faults they may have found, and then put back together, and everything out there was done by hand.
And a guy named Albert Kahn at the genius part on all of this?
Albert Kahn was born in Germany, came to the United States when he was 11, and he never went to college. He, I believe, never went to high school, and he became, not just in my mind, but he became to many scholars of World War II factory design the genius of American industrial architecture during the 20th century. And this...
Yeah, I was going to say, what defines that? Is it the way the buildings were imagined, constructed?
It's the speed in which he built, designed, and subsequently the plants were built. It's the materials that he used. It's the functionality of the building. For instance, the Pratt & Whitney plant was 3 million square feet, and it was operational within 6 months and fully operational within 9 months. Albert Kahn responded to the edict that America had to reduce the use of steel. He used 1/5 the amount of it typically would go into a building of this size.
And the photographs that we see at the Belger sort of reflect some of these different strategies. Sometimes they're just pretty pictures, too.
And keep in mind, each of the contemporary photographs, they took about an hour to set up before the actual image was shot. This was not shot with an iPhone. This was shot with a large format camera, and the result was a 4x5 negative. And the photographs clearly reflect the monumentality, the absence of the human figure in the space, kind of that ghost town, very curious place that we were in for quite a while.
It must have felt like you were the ghosts of some people who were at one point doing some really important stuff there.
Well, at one point during the peak of World War II, there were 21,000 people working at Pratt & Whitney. And this went on, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So there was a massive amount of people working inside this 3 million square foot plant.
What are you noticing about people's reactions?
Well, thanks to the coverage in the Kansas City Star and thanks to the generosity of the Belgers, we do have this exhibit at the Belger Arts Center and the Crossroads, and there are historic images as well as a narrative that accompanies those historic images, and of course Richard Welnowski's contemporary images. And I knew that it would reach out to, not your typical art crowd, and that's what it has done. I mean, engineers have come, architects have come, students, and what's What isn't surprising is that a lot of former employees that are still alive of the Pratt & Whitney plant have come in to see the exhibition, and you hear a lot of stories.
No doubt you do. We don't have time for them, though. We're just going to have to say thank you to the only history maven that I know right off the top. It's always great to know what you're up to, and we'll find out somewhere down the line what the next assignment for Sydney Milstein is. Thanks for joining us on the Local Show.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Nathan Lewis Jackson is a playwright in residence at the Kansas City Repertory Theater. He grew up in Kansas City, Kansas, went to K-State, then to Juilliard, and he's already seen his plays produced at Lincoln Center and in regional theaters across the country. Now, one of them, When I Come to Die, opens this weekend at the Kansas City Rep. Randy Mason watched as cast and crew started the rehearsal process on Nathan's death row drama.
Lights.
Why's there only 5 boxes here, Cooper? Mrs. Letters, man.
I was told I got into Juilliard 2 days before my first child was born. So it was a real roller coaster trip. And I'm telling you, when we got to New York, I was trying to find a place to stay. It was the worst time ever. And I felt like I was, these little hopes and dreams of mine, I was ruining everything with my family. And we're moving out here, we have no money. It was a lion roller coaster. I had no idea which twists and turns we were going to take.
I'm going to take the first part, and I want you to join me halfway in with the high part.
Brokology would probably be the first success, which was first year in Juilliard. And I felt really unprepared. So I took an older piece that I wrote, and I changed that and kind of made that into Brokology. And it was really just turning it in so I could say, hey, man, I'm working, I'm trying here.
I know all the ways to make it easy on me.
Brokology was more from the heart. It dealt with some real life things that I dealt with, as opposed to When I Come to Die.
Cooper!
Though I know people who have been incarcerated, I myself have never been, so a lot of that stuff is pulling from different sources.
Come on, Cooper! Let this man out! And give me the rest of those letters!
Or perhaps pulled from today's headlines. When I Come to Die tells a miraculous tale of an inmate who somehow survives his execution, and how both he and those around him deal with its repercussions. The recent spotlight on capital punishment and its protocols was something Jackson did not foresee when he was writing the play.
Actually, the reason why I picked lethal injection was because I couldn't find a lot of cases where there was something that went wrong with the execution, as opposed to electrocution, which was botched a lot, firing squad, hanging, all this stuff had big issues. So we're all trying to find the most humane way for people to die, and this appeared to be the way.
That's what's staring you in the face.
This issue that I thought was pretty clean now has gotten messy, which has made the play better, made it more timely.
And what have you done with it? Nothing. Just like you did before. It's how all that changed. Let's shake things up around here.
These characters are so human and so believable.
Kyle Hatley has worked with Nathan's words before. He directed the Rep's production of Brokology 4 years ago. Though the subject matter of When I Come to Die is anything but light, he's found a surprising amount of humor embedded within it.
But I think that's what a good playwright needs to do, or must do, is hold the mirror up to nature in a way. Make sure that we are seeing ourselves on stage. I think you can't do that without humor. To have a character laugh at his or herself, or create a scenario where the audience can laugh at what these characters are going through or enduring, reminds us of our humanity.
In 3 weeks, my time is up. I got 3 weeks to figure out what I should do. You gotta help me, D. You gotta.
After several weeks in a rehearsal room at the Rep, the action moves to the Copacan stage downtown, where Kyle and company are deeply enmeshed in teching the show. Sound, music, and lights play a vital role in building the mood for Jackson's story. After a staged reading last winter, playwright and director have been making adjustments. For one thing, the already small cast got one character smaller.
You know, I asked if he had any idea for changes that he might want to work on for this production, and he said, yeah, of course. And we both sort of had the idea of what would it be like if we removed this guard character. So we both knew going into it that that was something we wanted to explore.
It's not like Kyle's asking me, can we put an octopus in the third scene? It's just, can we change this the line that says Cooper, the character's name, into he. Yeah, you can do it. Yeah, it's fine. I know there are players who are a little more, who latch on a little bit more to their words. I love the words that I wrote. I wouldn't have written them otherwise. That being said, once I finish the project, it is a matter of moving on to the next project. There's a lot of stories that need to be told, a lot of stories need to be written. I will not write half of the stories I want to write before I leave this earth, I'm sure. So I got to get rolling to get them all out.
What makes Nathan's writing so strong is that his characters are so human and so believable that we feel we have immediate access to them. It's just like meeting a new person in real life. So it's easy to get drunk on Nathan's work.
You gotta help me, D! You gotta!
I know I'm not going to change the world. I'm not setting out to do that. I just hope that you watch a play and you enter the play, you leave the play just a hair different. Or instead of just going home and turning on the TV, you're just going to your daily routine. Maybe you call someone and say, hey, I was thinking about something. Or something about this play made me think of you. How have you been? I don't know, but something makes you go about your day just a hair different. One day. And I've done a great thing. I've had an effect on your life, and it's fantastic.
I got a picture.
When I Come to Die starts in previews tomorrow. It will run on the Rep's Copaken stage downtown through March 15th.
On March 13th, a special performance to benefit Reaching Out From Within will be held. That organization works with incarcerated individuals to help them more productively re-enter society. Alumni of that group will speak after the show.
And that is it for this edition of The Local Show. I'm Randy Mason.
And I'm Nick Haynes. Thanks for watching.
3 weeks, my time is up. I got 3 weeks to figure out what I should do. You gotta help me, D. You gotta.